Okay, welcome everybody. Can everybody hear me? Okay. My name is Paul Bordé, and I'm going to be doing a talk today about CBD. Just a quick background about myself. So I'm from Chatham. I'm 57 years old. I'm a relatively active aging athlete, played sports my whole life. I love golf and tennis and rackets and running and everything else. And back in 2019, I was playing in a golf tournament in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I had a pretty serious back injury. Do I sound like there's a feedback? No. Okay. So I was playing in a golf tournament and I felt a pretty serious pain in my lower back. Didn't know what it was. And I powered through. I took about 25 plus Advil to get me through the round. And when I got home, I got an earful from my wife saying, that's really bad, really dangerous. And it could be bad for your liver and you could die. But I was in such bad shape. I was bent over and I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit down. I ended up going to a chiropractor, and the chiropractor asked me if I knew what CBD was. And at the time, again, this is 2019, I had never even heard of CBD, but I was so desperate for any relief for my back that I was all ears. So that's when my journey began. He ended up giving me a tincture bottle of oil, which we're going to talk about that, which I was ingesting about 300 milligrams of broad spectrum every day. And he gave me a topical cream that I was rubbing directly onto my back. And I did this for 2 weeks before he ended up laying a finger on me. That was by design. He wanted the CBD to absorb into my system. But I felt relief very quickly. And he started working on me. I'll never be 100%. I stretch every day. But that's when it all began. But the point is, it opened my eyes to alternative wellness outside of the mainstream doctor telling you to do this, that, or the other. And it also opened my eyes to this incredible worldwide growth with CBD and cannabinoids. Since then, I've done a lot of research while traveling around the country, learning more about the space. I have a son who at the time was an analyst on Wall Street, and he was sending me a bunch of information from Wall Street's perspective of the growth of CBD and other cannabinoids. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then I stumbled upon doing research on my own. I stumbled upon the chief medical correspondent for CNN. I think his name is Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Thank you. And he was talking about cannabinoids and all certain different cannabinoids in the cannabis family. And he was making claims that they were going to change medical science worldwide, and it was just the beginning. So this was back in 2019. And that certainly opened my eyes. Between that, the research I was doing, the research I was being given from my son, and most importantly, what was impacting me personally on my back is opened my eyes and got me started. I got so interested that I looked at purchasing a company in Michigan, a CBD company, and I decided not to do that for other reasons. But I've got a friend of mine who ultimately became my business partner. He lives on the West Coast. His name is Stephen Crane. And we decided to open up our doors and get into the CBD business on our own. So back in December of 2020 is when Primabee started. Okay, last but not least, I am not a doctor. I'm not a physician. Anything I say today, I would always recommend common sense. Speak to your doctor before you ingest anything or take anything. In this world we live in these days, I think those words, common sense, are beginning to be forgotten. Okay. These are some questions that we're going to discuss today. What is CBD? Is CBD from the marijuana plant? What is the difference between CBD and THC? What does CBD actually do for your body? What are the benefits of using CBD? Can you get high from taking CBD? Can you drive your vehicle after using CBD? Is it safe for pets? And we're going to talk about proper dosing. Okay. So what is CBD? So CBD is short for cannabidiol, which is naturally found in the hemp plant, not the marijuana plant, the hemp plant. CBD is a natural substance obtained from hemp plants that may promote wellness without any psychoactive or intoxicating events. In other words, by taking CBD is not going to give you that euphoric high. The hemp plant is a cousin of the marijuana plant, but unlike marijuana, the hemp plant contains no more than trace amounts of the psychoactive ingredient called tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC. There are three types of CBD. There's full spectrum, there's broad spectrum, and there's isolate. There's a big difference between the three. We'll start at the bottom. Isolate is CBD is a molecule essentially, but isolate is isolating it and it's taking out, it's purifying it so much that it's taking out, in my opinion, all the good things that CBD has to offer. If we skip from isolate up to full spectrum is great, but it does have trace amounts of THC in it. And again, THC is the part that gives you that psychoactive high. THC is super important because many governmental agencies, including the military and police departments and many privately owned companies as well, blood test people regularly to see if you have THC in your system. But that's changing. That's changing quickly. As a company, we focus intentionally on broad spectrum. Broad spectrum is sort of like the tweener between the isolate and full spectrum. And you will not get tested. If you get tested, you will not get flagged for THC. The entourage effect is just a terminology that is used for all the wide benefits of by taking CBD, all the great things that it does. And you get a true entourage effect by using full spectrum. You get an entourage effect with broad spectrum, but not as great as the full spectrum. The other piece is prescription is not needed. You could buy CBD in an apothecary. You could buy it in a store. You could also buy it in a gas station. Again, going back to common sense, think about where you're purchasing CBD from. If it doesn't look and feel right, it probably is not. This is a weird feedback I'm getting on this side, Samantha, just so you know. I'll do the best I can. Okay. What are cannabinoids? CBD is an active compound known as a cannabinoid. CBD is a cannabinoid derived from hemp and is one of about 130 major and minor cannabinoids. To give you scale of how quickly the world in the cannabinoids is evolving, when I started the company back in 2020, there were about 110 known cannabinoids. So in 2 short years, another 20 cannabinoids have been identified. Cannabinoids provide therapeutic effects when consumed by humans and animals. Cannabis plants are famous for producing CBD and THC, two very similar cannabinoids with one major difference. THC, which is derived from the marijuana side, can induce that high, that euphoric high, while CBD does not. your body creates cannabinoids naturally. The natural cannabinoid that your body has is called anandamine. And so right now, you all have cannabinoids as you sit here, but everybody's different and everyone produces cannabinoids at a different level. It's why, as a father of 3 kids, my wife and I would always joke, why do our 3 kids, 31, 29, and 26, are all different people? They're raised in the same house since they were kids, but they're 3 different human beings. And that's because from a molecular perspective, they're wired differently, and their endocannabinoid system inside their body is making them different human beings in every way. Okay, this is a simple slide showing marijuana and hemp. It's very common that people confuse marijuana and hemp. 2 different plants, same family, but two very different plants. If there was a hemp, if I had hemp plants all over this stage, you might think it's marijuana. If you look closely, though, the leaf pattern is slightly different. So the world is cannabis. Marijuana and hemp are connected in that world, but again, 2 very different things. The predominant cannabinoid that's produced from the marijuana side is THC, like we talked about, and the predominant cannabinoid that's produced from the hemp plant is CBD. But we have this other piece here in the flow chart that is just simply showing that if you take grapes, wine and juice are in the same family. You could drink wine and feel that euphoric high pretty quickly. You could drink gallons of grape juice, and you're not going to get high. You might get a stomach ache, but you're never going to get high. But again, same family, 2 different things. Am I going too fast? Okay, cannabis history. It might be hard to read up here, so I'll just follow me. So hemp has been used for thousands of years. From what some of the research I've done, the earliest I could find was Spain had used it thousands of years ago. But hemp dates back, getting relevant here to the States, hemp dates back to the first settlements in Jamestown in about 1616. They used it for many things, including lines, like for ropes. They used it for making sails, mainly around the maritime community. But they also used it for lots of other things, like clothing. They used it for furniture. They used it for medicinal purposes as well. There were towns named after hemp, as in Hempstead, Long Island in New York, Hempfield, Pennsylvania, Hemp Hill, Kentucky. A little known factoid is that the Declaration of Independence in 1776 was actually hemp paper. So all those John Hancocks that were on that paper were signed on literal hemp paper. In the early 1900s, hemp fell into the same classification as marijuana and was thus demonized due to a lack of information and financial interests. There were 3. Yes, that's a little hemp. Thank you, Karen. That's a hemp yarn, excuse me. So that's actual hemp. So back in the early 1900s, when hemp came under attack for some very, very important reasons, there were some major industrialists in this country. Last names were the DuPonts and the Mellons, and they had big interests in land that harvested the trees and were used for furniture, but also cotton for cotton fields. And with this growing hemp reputation that was building very quickly, they felt threatened by that, and they said, they got together and said, we have a little problem here. And so they contacted another industrialist by the name of William Randolph Hearst, and the three of them collaborated and put together a false narrative. And they basically put hemp in the penalty box with marijuana. They falsely created this wrong and incorrect message that hemp is bad for all the reasons why they thought marijuana was bad, but it was all fake. Can you imagine that people in this country would actually lie to benefit themselves or something? Hard to believe, right? So they created this false narrative about it, and because of the power they had, in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was enacted, and hemp was put into that penalty box with marijuana. And that act made hemp cultivation federally illegal. That same legislation where that happened stayed in effect for about 80 years. Fast forward up into 2018, in December is when the Farm Bill was enacted. So the Farm Bill took hemp out of the penalty box and said it's not a bad thing. You can thank President Obama for doing that. He was very involved with that, and he said it's not common sense, and so he enacted this, and he was part of that, and here we are today. So, by the way, as all this was happening, there's a Dr. McCollum, he's in his mid to late 90s, and I read a lot about him. From what I understand, he's still working almost every single day, and he was one of the main pioneers of cannabinoids and CBD, research since the 1940s. But he lives in Israel, and Israel has become the main epicenter for cannabinoid studies since the 1940s. They're talking about another bill which is going to be passed soon. It could happen as early as this year. It's called the hemp bill. Once that hemp bill passes, Big Pharma, which we all know, in my humble opinion, is going to get very involved in the cannabinoid space. Okay. You with me so far? How does CBD work? Okay. So CBD works by interacting with the body's endocannabinoid system. You probably have not heard of the endocannabinoid system because the endocannabinoid system was recently discovered. Samantha and I were just talking about it earlier. In 1988, it's arguably the most important part of your system. It's also known as your ECS, and it's only been discovered not that long ago. 1988 is not a long time ago. So the ECS is an internal network of receptors that works to keep the body in balance. It's kind of like a signaling system. So when you're taking CBD, it's by taking, however you're going to take it, we're going to talk about that. Your endocannabinoid system is connecting through these site receptors called CB1 and CB2 that it gets channeled to whatever sites are in your body. Look at it this way: by taking CBD is looking for deficiencies that your body might have. In case you're a light sleeper, by taking CBD, it's going through your endocannabinoid systems. It's identifying that deficiency, and it's helping to support that. It's helping to bolster that deficiency. In that case, we're talking about sleep is one of them. Could be anxiety. It could be high blood pressure. It could be injury prone. There's a lot of different things. When your body is not able to produce enough endocannabinoids, supplementing them with CBD is super important. And that's why people are taking CBD every day, including myself. Has anybody ever heard of a runner's high? So runner's high is a very common thing where you feel good, your body starts producing something called dopamine, and dopamine is helps your goes to your brain through your CB1 receptor, and that pleasure that you feel by running, that runner's high, is CBD is supporting that. It's helping that dopamine get to your brain and helps it fire on all cylinders. Dopamine also acts in a lot of other ways, like by making cookies, smelling cookies in your kitchen, that gives you a sense of pleasure. That dopamine is firing and it's helping that out. Your dopamine is working in lots of ways by reading a book that you might love, reading a poem, listening to music, watching a movie, and getting emotional in the mood of what something you're watching or reading. That dopamine is impacting how your body is reacting. Now, dopamine can also not be such a good thing. Too much dopamine can actually be bad. Too much dopamine can make you stay up too late and not sleep. It can give you stress and anxiety. So the endocannabinoid system it regulates that neurotransmitter, and it as your body ebbs and flows, your endocannabinoid system is helping to regulate what's actually hitting your brain. But there's lots of other things too in your body. So CBD through your endocannabinoid system is supporting things like your immune system or your metabolism. We talked about your central nervous system is really your brain. But to me, the most important thing on here by taking CBD is that it's supporting your immune system, because your immune system is what's keeping us all healthy. And if you're not healthy, you have a lot of problems. Your immune system is assessing threats that are coming to your body every single day, whether they be disease, whether they be whatever it may be. It's assessing the threat and it's attacking and putting them down thousands of times every single day. So in my humble opinion, taking CBD is super important. If there's one main thing, it's to keep your immune system firing on all cylinders every single day. So that's why I take about 100 milligrams of CBD every day. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but lots of other things: your metabolism, your muscles, your bones, your gastrointestinal system, your hormones, etc., to name just a few. Is everybody with me so far? Okay. CBD uses. Okay, fancy word at the top here called homeostasis. Homeostasis means balance. Keeping your body in balance is the most important thing. If your body is off balance, that's when you get sick. That's when things happen. As a very basic example of your body not being in homeostasis is if you don't sleep well. If you're not sleeping at night, it makes it much more difficult to function the following day. And do that over and over and over again, it gets harder. And then problems pop up. You'll get sick. Your body is trying to repair and keep up, but if it's not in homeostasis, that's when issues start to happen. So homeostasis is super important. So CBD possesses many therapeutic uses for the brain and body, like we talked about. If you're ingesting it daily or applying it topically, it helps with all sorts of ailments. These are just some that we've listed. Inflammation is super bad, and that creates swelling and all sorts of things. So you want to always keep inflammation at bay. CBD supports that from ever happening. Pain and discomfort, anxiety, insomnia, upset stomach. I recently had a meeting with a nurse from the Spalding Rehabilitation Center. This is going back a few months ago. She found us, and the Spalding Rehabilitation Center works closely with the Cape Cod Hospital with people that are are cancer patients who were taking chemotherapy. CBD helps with upset stomach. It helps that. It helps your nauseousness. And so mainstream medicine is now more and more looking to cannabidiol, CBD, and other cannabinoids to support that. Cognitive movements disorders, allergies, mood, memory. As an interesting story for me, so I've been taking CBD for about 2 years. I take about 100 milligrams a day. I used to, as an aging athlete, I feel like I was taking Advil or aspirin for something in my body. I would call them gremlins that lived in my knees or my back or my elbow. And so I would just pop Advil regularly. I thought the little green gel cap was cool looking, and I would take it, having no idea how bad it was for you. So in the 2 years that I've been taking CBD, 100 milligrams or so for me a day, I have not taken, not one day, not a single aspirin, Tylenol, or Advil. CBD is working for me. It's also, we talk about allergies. I feel like I kept CVS in business for many years with all the allergy meds that I would take and buy from them. I've not taken a single allergy medication in 2 years. Again, the CBD is helping my body get into homeostasis, balance, and the deficiency that I would fight for allergies. CBD is supporting that, raising that level up, and making my body run healthier. Okay, there's a lot of discoveries that we hear about all the time. I'll give you an example. So I live on Cape Cod in Chatham, and especially during the summer, there's kids and families and swimming and outdoors and all sorts of things. But I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and say with kids and mosquito bites, they apply topically CBD to their children who have mosquito bites. Goes away like that. Bee bites, jellyfish bites. CBD, it's attacking, it's disrupting that inflammation where it hits your body, and it neutralizes it. So those are just some other examples. Please have a seat. Welcome. I'm going to get to that. Welcome. One other thing I want to mention before we move on CBD uses, I'm going to say it a lot. The science is catching up. It's becoming more and more widely recognized by using CBD from mainstream medicine every single day. If someone is saying it's not true, or it's becoming impossible. It's becoming more and more impossible for them to present an argument of having negative things to say about it, because of the new trials and research that comes out at warp speed now almost every single day. So the science, again, is catching up. Okay, pets. So pets are an important part of our life. It is for me. I'm a dog owner. I have 2 Jack Russell Terriers. I love them. My wife loves them more than she loves me, I think. That's another story. But our pets have this thing called an endocannabinoid system as well. And in fact, it's recently it's been noted that there are actually more receptor sites in pets, in canines, than there are in humans. I want to go back to something real quick. All these dots around here are the receptor sites in your body, okay? And the CB1 and CB2 are the receptors that go from taking it, and they get to all these different sites, okay? Your nervous system, your brain, a lot of them are there. That's helping you with your mood and your focus and brain functions, cognitive functions. But all these other receptor sites are out there. Now, if you go to canines and felines, we could probably make a better slide. But the amount of receptor sites they have in their bodies is more than double than us humans. So dogs, I can speak a lot about dogs because I have two dogs, and we give our dogs CBD every single day. So dogs respond very, very well with CBD. Just a quick funny story. I have two Jack Russells. Before we had opened our doors with our company, where we live in Chatham, around the holidays, around 4th of July, there's a lot of fireworks, and it can get a little loud and crazy. But our older dog, Lily, she's 11. She always, she gets really nervous and anxious when she hears a motorcycle or thunder or a loud truck or something. But during the summer around the 4th, she's a little bit of a basket case. She shakes and she's nervous. And my first experience back in 2019, before we had opened up Primaby, I had all the CBD all over my house, and I was trying to learn about it. And I didn't know what to do, but Lily, on the 4th of July, she was shaking, and my wife said, "Do something. You have all the CBD in the house." And I put a tincture, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I put it in her mouth, I squeeze it, and within a few minutes, she went completely limp in my arms. Her tongue came out, and my wife thought I'd killed her dog, which was very stressful. And the good news is that the only damage to Lily is that she took an 8-hour nap. She took a long nap. In hindsight, I'd given her about 25 times the amount of what a 13 or 14 pound dog should get. I gave her something that the human should get that's 200 pounds. So, but I learned the power of CBD at that point. But felines, I'm not a huge, I've never had cats, but we do have a lot of customers who have cats, and we sell a lot of products to cat owners as well. Cats, a little bit more finicky in what they eat, but they benefit greatly from daily CBD use as well. Okay, CBD quality and serving amount. How do you take CBD? So there are lots of ways to take it. The most basic one is through a tincture bottle, which looks something like. Can you pass that around, Karen, please? So that's called tincture oil. Okay. So essentially, there's a dropper in there, and you squeeze it, and you put it under your tongue. You got to let it sit under your tongue for a minimum of 60 seconds. I use that every day. That's one way of doing it. You let it sit there because your endocannabinoid system, the gateway to it, one of the fastest ways is right under your tongue. So that's a popular way of doing it. Another way of doing it is through soft gels. A lot of people, including my wife, prefer the soft gel to the tincture oil. I think she spilled the oil on her shirt or something one time, and she didn't like that. But so a lot of people take soft gels as well. There's other ways too. Edible gummies is another way of taking CBD. There's topicals that can be put right onto your, onto the area where you may feel pain or discomfort. And then suppositories is something that they're doing a lot of work a lot of research with in Israel for patients who are in comas, et cetera. But to get to your endocannabinoid system as quickly as possible, under your tongue or through the suppository. Okay, I have some examples of bottles here. It's super confusing on the dosing part. Can everybody read this? Can you read this? Okay. I'll do the best I can. So these are 3 brands. They're here. We were just talking about it this morning, how confusing this is. On a bottle, like you guys were just passing around, the bottle, the amount of milligrams which is presented on the bottle or the jar can be super confusing. And so, as an example, this brand, Medterra, which is a great company, by the way, I'm not picking on them, but from this one perspective, I am. It says here that there's 1,000 milligrams, right? This bottle right here, another great brand, says there's 60 milligrams. So somebody who's in the store for the first time, they might be walking up to the shelf and say, wow, that says 1,000, this says 60. There must be much more that's in here than this. That's not true. It's confusing because you have to look at what the serving size is and in its total, in total. Like, for example, this 1,000 milligrams is for this entire bottle. So this bottle is 1 fluid ounce, which equals about 30 milliliters. And so whatever 1,000 times divided by 30 is, it's about, what is that? About, what is that? That's like maybe bad in math, maybe like 30-ish milligrams of CBD per dropper, okay? Where Charlotte's Web, and this is us in the middle, I'm trying to follow the big boys like this. They're very clear. 60 milligrams is per each dropper, okay? So if each dropper is 30 is 1 milliliter, right? 1 milliliter is 60 milligrams, right? There's 30 milliliters in 1 fluid ounce. You go 30 times 60. This bottle actually has 1,600 milligrams versus this saying there's 1,000. That's a little confusing. Are you guys sort of with me? You have to look at the, if you're looking at the bottle, you have to look at what the serving amount is, because the serving size here is not 1,000 milligrams. That's just the total amount in the bottle. Okay. This one says 60 milligrams, but that's the serving size. And so you have to really read it carefully. So it's really 60 times 30, because there's 30 milliliters in a 1 fluid ounce bottle. So 30 times 60 is 1,800 milligrams. Again, I just raised this because it's kind of hard to follow, and we can talk more about it after, if you'd like. There's another thing that's out there. That's a lot of the CBD brands that are out there that I've figured out. I would say conservatively, based on me being in this business for a couple of years and researching it for probably a year before that, there's so much confusion, and a lot of CBD companies are not so forthright, and they're not so honest. I'm not saying they're bad, but there is a little fraud that's out there. And I would say 50% of the brands that you see out there, you got to really look at the fine print. And one of the things that some brands do not do is they don't provide something on the bottle or on the product that shows that it's called a COA, Certificate of Analysis. So what the bottle says has in it, how do you know that's even right? The COA is a number that's usually on the bottom of the bottle somewhere listed, and it should give a lot number and a batch number. So that lot number, batch number, you can look up. Karen, why don't you pass that to, yeah, thank you. It's kind of, it's not easy to read, but if you go on to that, and you plug that number in, that'll hyperlink to a lab. And the lab that we use is called Botanicor. It's a blue chip lab, meaning that its reputation is one of the best that's out there. As a brand, we're trying to hang out with the big boys, meaning that the big boys that have are AAA rated, we want to be hanging around those guys, not the guys in the bottom who have no rating. But one of the easiest ways to build trust and transparency with the customers is to be letting them know they can look it up themselves, that what our bottle says actually has that information, has that amount of CBD and other cannabinoids that are in there. So third-party lab testing, certificate of analysis, COAs, is super important. Okay, we talked about how much CBD is in the product. The absorption rate of CBD is different for everybody. So it's a very common thing where people will say, well, I started taking CBD yesterday and I don't feel any different. Well, it's not like drinking a tequila sunrise or a martini. It takes time to absorb into your system. I always recommend that you have to give it about 30 days minimum to let it get into your system. The other problem, though, is that what's good for you might not be good for you, meaning the amount of milligrams you're taking for yourself might be totally different from the person right next to you. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Your health, your weight, your sex, your age, etc., your body composition. Just like people who drink alcohol, we all know the people who can drink a sip of wine and they feel it, they get buzzed or they can't stand, or the people who can drink 3 6-packs of beer and they don't even feel it. So there's a lot of similarities to that. So again, absorption rate, minimum 30 days. And we always say to start low. And then if you're not feeling anything after 30 days, raise the amount, the concentration that you're taking. Okay, the FDA serves as somewhat of a regulator and gives guidelines to the community. But the FDA has been overwhelmed with a lot of things going on like COVID. But they are sort of the regulatory body since it's so new. December of 18, when it passed as legal, that's not that long ago. They're still trying to get their arms around it and catch up, but that's happening. All right, the last part on this slide, which I think is super important, is some trusted peer review sources where you can go. I would highly recommend you should write this down. I mean, if you go online and Google something with CBD, you're going to get a lot of advertorials. You're going to get a lot of people saying a lot of things, good and bad. But how do you know what the heck they're saying is even right? These two companies are, to me, are about the best that are out there. So one of them is called projectcbd.org. It's a very sort of layman's terms source to be able to ask questions. You can go, once you get onto their site, you can go into their search bar and you can type in neuropathy and CBD, and it's going to spit out a whole bunch of information. For the super intelligent, medical mind people, if you want to take it another step deeper, the National Institute of Health, NIH.gov, it acts as the same thing. And it'll spit out a lot of stuff, but just be prepared that it's written from scientists and medical doctors and it's, researchers. It's a little bit more in depth. But again, the first one is www.projectcbd.org. And the other one is NIH.gov. NIH meaning the National Institute of Health. There are many other ones, but those are the top two that I like to recommend. Everybody with me so far? Yes. The first one is www.projectcbd.org. www.projectcbd.org, projectcbd.org, and the other one is NIH, as in the National Institute of Health.gov. But again, the projectcbd.org is a little bit easier to follow and understand. If you really want to go much more deep, go to nih.gov. Both those are the Bibles. Those are those are two of my primary go-to sources. Okay, give me an example. What are the rules? Okay, we kind of talked about that in the beginning, but just to quickly kind of bring you up to speed. So THC and CBD are they're both cannabinoids, but they're two very different things. So CBD, which is cannabidiol, is generally derived from the hemp plant, right? Where THC is the psychoactive cannabinoid, which is generally derived from the marijuana plants. So they're two different things. THC gives you that psychoactive high, like people, the pot smokers for forever would take, they would get high. It's the THC which is in there, which is giving them that that experience. No, it's not. In fact, not only is it legal to mix them, it's actually good because the THC and the CBD together create a compound that has many beneficial, does a lot of incredibly beneficial things to your body. But finding out what that ratio is from reputable companies is another thing entirely. So so like what we were talking about before with the certificate of analysis, to make sure that that what you're buying actually says what you're buying actually is what it says it is super important. It better say right. I mean, recently somebody was telling me about they purchased a bunch of CBD in like a farm stand on the side of the road. So going back to what I said earlier, common sense. If you're driving in Vermont and you pull over and someone's selling something at a farm stand, you got to just, is that really a good decision? Like it might be perfectly fine, but just if you're taking something that can have, impact on your body, be very careful. Common sense. Okay. Cannabinoids and other diseases, illnesses, and conditions. So, COVID-19 infectious disease. About a year ago, all of a sudden, there was a lot of energy and a lot of discussion about cannabinoids and COVID-19. And so these are just, you could look these up yourself. And I'm not saying here today, for the record, that take CBD, you're not going to get COVID. I'm not saying that at all. But some of the trusted news outlets, Reuters, NIH, Bloomberg, a lot of them were coming out and were saying that there were cannabinoids that were helping tremendously with certain things, and and the results they were suggesting with a spike protein could be helpful with COVID. But the point of me bringing that up is that it's so new, and we're just in the beginning of this learning cycle, which is really just beginning to take off. Autism spectrum disorder. I recently had a meeting about a month or so ago back in Connecticut with a woman whose son is autistic. He's 16, and he was involved in a trial. He just finished his third trial out of NYU Medical Langone, and they were giving his son 700 milligrams of broad spectrum CBD every day, which is a lot. Again, I take 100 milligrams. This young man was taking 700 milligrams. And so the first trial, and the trial happened quickly in under a year, but the first trial, he started feeling a lot of his symptoms as an autistic young man were getting better, like, which I didn't know what this was, but stimming is something where people who suffer with autism, they rock in a chair to help them deal with frustration. The stimming had gone away. He was sleeping really well through the night. He didn't really have anger issues, but she was telling me other kids did, and their frustration was making their anger sort of agitating them. But the CBD was absolutely calming that down. By the third trial, her son was sleeping completely through the night. His frustration, his anxiety had virtually gone away, and so she had opened my eyes that, wow, like in the autistic community, they're using CBD, especially through this trial, effectively. It had amazing results. I didn't realize that in the autistic community that it's a very, very high number, something like 1 in 68 people in America are somewhere in the spectrum. Dravet syndrome is basically they're all sort of related, but it's a form of epilepsy, but it's really more derived for children. And so epilepsy, these are really connected, but there was a drug recently the FDA had approved called Epidiolex, which helps people with seizure disorders deal with what they have. But Epidiolex is broad spectrum, which is CBD. A friend of mine recently was telling me a story. He's from Connecticut. And he was kind of, for the last couple of years, always kind of suspicious, like, what is the CBD? What are you doing? Why, like, what is this even real? And so his personal journey, this happened very recently in January. He was getting violently sick, and he would vomit like 20 times or 25 times in an hour, and then it would go away and he'd feel fine. But then it happened like 10 more times in January, and he started going to hospitals to try to figure out what it was. It was so violent for him that he ended up being rushed to the hospital a couple times. But he ended up figuring out that it's a disease that he has called Meniere's, which is a fluid in your ear, and it gets you dizzy and gets it's disoriented in the beginning, but then you get really violently sick. The world leading specialist for Meniere's apparently is in I forget where it was, but he flew out there, and they said to him, there's not a lot of treatments. However, all these trials and research are pointing towards CBD as a very helpful way to treat it. Just the beginning stages. And so now my friend, who was kind of always questioning me, he's now regularly taking a lot of broad spectrum CBD. Another friend of mine was just operated on, has something called Dupuytren's contracture. And Dupuytren is essentially, it's something that happens in your hands. It's very hereditary, but it's caused by stress and by a lot of things. But in essence, your fingers start to curl, and you can't open your fingers anymore. And so my friend just had surgery, and so she had the nerves and the tendons all cut into, and they took out all the cartilage that was there to open up her hands. Not much they can do, but CBD is a form of treatment that they're talking a lot about. Okay, we talked about the endocannabinoid system being discovered in 1988. Why I have this on the slide is that it's super relevant. Your endocannabinoid system is the reason why you blink, or you touch your phone, or you move your knee. All the motions that you make in your body are always being channeled. That's directly or indirectly through your endocannabinoid system. Super important. More and more every day is being discovered, and it's an exciting time, but we are in the beginning cycle. All right, next slide. CBD usage becoming mainstream. So a lot of athletes are using CBD more and more. I'm a golfer or wannabe golfer, and Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Billy Horschel are big advocates of CBD. They talk about it publicly all the time. Olympians like Kerry Walsh Jennings, Lolo Jones, Major League Baseball, David Wells, Kylie Blanks. Major League Baseball recently, back last October, is now publicly being publicly endorsed by Charlotte's Web. That's a major breakthrough because Major League Baseball is as big as you get in the sporting world, and Charlotte's Web now is working with so many athletes publicly being endorsed by Major League Baseball. If that's not a sign of what's to come, I don't know what is. Lots of other athletes: Gronkowski, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, hockey, basketball, soccer, etc. On the celebrity side, there's a lot of talk about it as well. The first one is with Tom Hanks. So Tom Hanks apparently has type 2 diabetes, and he's funding research at the Cornell University about CBD studies because he is experiencing incredible results from his personal use of CBD. Jennifer Aniston, Whoopi Goldberg, et cetera. These are all different celebrities. Michael J. Fox is another interesting one. So he suffers from something called Parkinson's disease, which is an affliction that he's been battling with. And he developed something called the MJ Fox Foundation. And that's helping him. He set that up because he's using CBD at a high dosage, which is helping tame his affliction with Parkinson's. The other ones like Kim Kardashian and Martha Stewart, et cetera, there's a lot of other celebrities that are in there. Okay, so I want to just mention a couple things. So my personal journey, I started out not knowing what it was. I was desperate at the time. I would have tried anything because I'd never experienced that much pain. I was like this. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit down. I certainly couldn't lay down. And this doctor, Dr. Massoud in Greenwich, Connecticut, he profoundly changed my life. He's also selling our products, by the way, in his practice. But it's opened my eyes tremendously. It's helped me tremendously. And I take about 100 milligrams of CBD every single day. And that'll be as part of my life till I die, like I drink water or brush my teeth. To give you a scale of how big CBD is growing, last year, CBD has overtaken the sale of vitamin C worldwide by a large margin. Every day, it widens from there. The other discoveries, like I was telling you about with allergies, et cetera, have greatly improved for me as well. The big thing that I want to say is this is the tip of the iceberg. This is not this anecdotal poppycock snake oil sales at all. To give you scale from Wall Street perspective, before it was legal, before the Farm Bill happened in 2018, it was several hundred million sales worldwide, roughly, and that's grown tremendously. They're saying that the sales that are now accounted for worldwide as of last year broke around 4 billion, depending on where you look. But the bigger news is they're saying in the next 7 years, by 2030, it's going to break $100 billion, and that's quite remarkable. So this is just the beginning of this journey, not the end. I want to go back to my questions from the beginning. and cover them. So what is CBD? So CBD is cannabidiol. Does CBD come from the marijuana plant? Yes or no? No. Comes from the hemp plant. What's the difference between CBD and THC? CBD does not get you high. Comes from the hemp plant. THC comes from the what plant? Yes, ma'am. There is ways to extract THC from the hemp plant, but that's a more involved explanation. That's kind of like a more advanced level, but for the fundamentals, that's correct. What does it do to the body? It has a lot of incredible benefits. It helps with, it supports your endocannabinoid system, which helps support balance. It fights inflammation. It does a lot of amazing things. Can you get high from CBD? No. Can you drive your car after using CBD? Absolutely. Is it safe for your pets? Totally. Not only is it safe, it's encouraged. And we talked about the FDA. So I'm going to leave it to you guys. Does anyone have any questions they would like for me to address? Yeah, that's a good, yes, that's a good question. So you're talking about, okay. So someone had asked, does CBD, are there flavors or other things that are added in there for the flavor profile? The answer is yes, there can be. Some of our products, like our oil, our tincture oil, we don't add any flavor components to it, but the terpenes is something which is added to it, which helps the flavor profile and gets that sort of harsh hempy taste out of it. Certain companies like this one right up here, this Charlotte's Web one, like the flavor profile is mint chocolate. So yes, so sometimes there are other flavors that are added to it. Ours, it's unflavored, but we've tried it with mint and stuff. It's more of a personal preference. For that sports cream that you're referring to, so that's a topical, and so there's menthol that's added in there, and the menthol, some people love the smell, some people hate the smell. My wife hates it because she brings it back to days of when our kids were playing hockey and locker rooms, etc. But some people actually really do enjoy it. It doesn't bother me. I like it, actually. So, but does it impact the concentration of the CBD? No, it does not. Yes. Great question. So, so, um, so dopamine is a neurotransmitter, essentially, right? And but it goes back to the root of supporting that and getting your body back to homeostasis. So by taking CBD is basically, it's a molecule that when you take it, it goes through your endocannabinoid system, and then look at it as like a key and a lock. The lock would be the site receptors, and the key would be the CBD that is a key that unlocks that lock. Okay, so by unlocking that, it's supporting the dopamine to flow freely as well. But again, it also acts as it's regulating. Too much dopamine is not good, and too much dopamine can be. And again, I'm not a physician. This is based on everything I'm reading. And there's more and more evidence every day, which is really incredible. But so the dopamine can impact your anxiety, and like you said, ADHD and things like that, sleep. But so your endocannabinoid system is acting as like a regulator. It's keeping that balanced, like a regulator in your car. it's kind of doing that same thing. So it's very promising with people that do help with ADHD, because it helps with focus. Um, it with a lot of other things as well. Any other questions? Okay. One final thing I want to say, that first of all, I want to thank everybody. If anybody is interested in receiving this PowerPoint, I'm happy to email it to you. My information, I'm happy to give it to you at the end, but my information is right here. It's the company's primab.com. And feel free to call me at any point. I'm also happy to hand out my information after we finish. So thank you very much, everybody.